In this talk, I will discuss A, B, and C influences. In learning the teachings of Gurdjieff, in attempting to understand what the fourth way is, what it is that Gurdjieff teaches, one should seek to understand for himself the meaning of this system of teaching. What is it about? What are its implications? Why is it necessary to struggle against all the teaching tells us to struggle against? Identification, negative emotions, etc. Firstly, the system is an organic whole. No single part of it can be considered real knowledge, for each part is taken in relation to the other parts, and thus the whole. One must ask themselves what it means for a teaching, or the teaching of Gurdjieff, to be an organic whole. It means that every part, however minor, has a part to play. Everything is connected, and everything is related to everything else. Knowledge of the system then demands knowledge of its parts, and the details of those separate parts. But there are those who, especially in relation to the work, the sources of which can be found spread far and wide, undoubtedly so, will state that a certain aspect of the work is alike something they've read here or there, something they've heard about in a certain religion or another mystical current. And this may very well be true, but such comparative studies are rather easy and somewhat problematic. For there are two reasons why this is different than first thought, and isn't simply a matter of comparison. Firstly, as stated, the work is an organic whole, and so any part which is thought of in comparison to some other external source will then become only understood as a part, as something which can be taken a part of the whole. Secondly, as Gurdjieff states, when listening to a lecture on Asia, don't ask questions about America. The work is a sincere study, it's a sincere practice, and if one wishes to compare, then they should ask themselves why they feel so compelled to do so, when the work has its own teaching. In relation to this, I must speak on what can be considered real knowledge, as I have mentioned it. To paraphrase Maurice Nicole, a man may know all about the small village that he lives in, but he'll know nothing of the town, the county, or the country that he lives within, or nearby. He'll know nothing of other countries or of the world. He has then no relative knowledge. He cannot see anything in its correct proportion, nor can he achieve greater knowledge. Without a real, that is to say, relative knowledge, man becomes lopsided, one-sided, and with this growth comes all the evils that follow it. And so, what of the knowledge we find and acquire and attempt to understand throughout life and reality? How does it relate to this organic whole of the work, this relative real knowledge? For in the work, everything you do must have meaning to you. The more it means to you, the more your self-development grows, the greater the force you will derive from the work. And yet meaning in this sense grows in relation to one's understanding of the organic whole. Meanings from separate parts culminating into a greater meaning in relation to one's understanding of the whole. The more one seeks to connect the parts and relate them, to understand the greater significance of work ideas, the more its meaning will grow. And this leads me to the three types of influences that are stated in the work, stated by Gurdjieff. A, B, and C influences. I'll begin with A and B influences. A influences are created by life. They arise and are created within waking sleep, within the mechanical reality of man. Money-making, science, sports, wealth, status, popularity, possessions, crime, power, law and order, food, clothing, etc. Open any news app, or check a news channel, or even read a newspaper, and you will see what A influences are. They are created by mechanical life, within mechanical life. Those who have observed what it is to be a machine, at least in some minor way, will know why I need not dwell on these influences. It's a recursion of the mechanical reality to focus on these things. One will get lost in their own eyes once more. Of course, there also exists in life influences of a different kind. B influences. These do not arise from life. They couldn't arise from life. Their source is different, which I will get to. They have nothing to do with the mundanities of mechanical man, of sleep, of business, sport, money, etc. They arise from outside the circle of mechanical life, from outside the circle of sleep. They are found in all times, in religious stories, fairy tales, certain classes of literature, ancient wisdom texts, often disguised in the form of allegory and myth. For those who have perhaps read some of these texts, understood some of these teachings, they may have found within them something which can be said to be the pure work. Why is there then such a background to these teachings? These teachings are nothing new, in the way that there is nothing new under the sun. They are adapted in form and presentation, but speak of something which was taught and understood long ago, about man and his inner possibilities. I think here of René Guénon's idea of tradition, and the fact that tradition surprisingly does change, but not in form. Tradition is like a flower, a seasonal flower. Every season it stays the same species, it stays the same flower, but its leaves and its blossoming flower must acclimatize to the culture, to the atmosphere of the time, of that cycle. The same teaching has always been given, only the dress changes, its outer appearance. It of course also changes in relation to the state of the people at the time when it is taught, how mechanical they are, what's their level of being. Everything in history which can be said to be concerned with man's evolution, of his reaching his capability, can be said to be a B influence. Nicole gives the 4 Gospels of the New Testament as a clear example of B influences. But I mentioned that the source, the origin of B influences is different. This is where C influences come in. The source of B influences is C influences. What's meant by this? Let us think back to the talk on knowledge and being, where it was said that mankind is not taken as being all on the same level as being. Mankind is not equal in its being. Man is divided into different categories of being. The mechanical men 1, 2, and 3, moving, emotional, and intellectual. Those who see everything primarily from one center. And then there is man number 4, he who arises from doing the work. He who is not one-sided. He's developed equally in all centers, and he is the balanced man, conscious. But of course I didn't really speak of the 3 remaining men, the 3 remaining levels. There are men 5, 6, and 7, who are conscious in the higher centers, the higher emotional, and the higher intellectual centers. Centers which do transmit influences to mechanical man, but he's insensitive. He cannot hear. And it is from this circle of conscious humanity that B influences originate. But they begin not as B influences, but as C influences. Only when they are sown into the mechanical life of waking sleep do they become B influences. This happens because C influences, conscious humanity, conscious men and women, cannot exist within mechanical life. Conscious teaching cannot exist within mechanical life by itself. It can, however, be kept alive and transmitted via schools or via those who have reached that state of consciousness, of being. This is the structure of an oral teaching. A C influence passes on the teaching to one who understands, who continues to pass it on. There must be a chain. This is why, Nicole says, the Gospels are a B influence. For they appeared a long time after Christ died, with Christ only teaching his disciples in private, saying only a certain amount in public, largely in parables. And of course we don't have the direct C influence before us to pass on the direct teaching. That is an overview of A, B, and C influences. Ideas which will be understood to a deeper extent after my talk on material and Gurdjieff's understanding of material. If you find these ideas interesting and you want to take them more sincerely, then please find information in the links below.